right?
Doing good. How about you? Good morning.
It's good. It's good. It's good. I like it.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our first presenter is the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, who is also the Minister for Finance, Economic Development and the Youth Economy, and also Minister for Justice and National Security. As usual, the Prime Minister will make his remarks and you will get the opportunity to ask your questions, and I encourage you to keep it nice and tight. Please remember, he's the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and we should exercise our manners when dealing with him. Thank you. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press.
Good morning.
I will make 4 short statements, and I will take your questions if you so desire. The first statement I would like to make is to speak about the accidents that have been happening in St. Lucia. We seem to have had a lure, but it has started back again and caused I think the death of a 5-year-old. Am I right? Yes. Yeah. A 4-year-old who died in one of the accidents. I want to express my deepest and sincere condolences to the relatives. I can imagine how they feel for a 4-year-old to die in an accident. I can imagine how they feel. A 4-year-old just beginning, it's sad, and words can't express how these parents and these relatives would feel. But I want to say one thing to the drivers in this country. And I want also for us to stop making excuses for recklessness. I'm not the judge, now am I the jury or even the police. But I think we drive too recklessly and at speeds that are not conducive to the roads we have in this country. And it is time that we stop making excuses for recklessness, for making excuses for driving without due care and attention, and put the blame where the blame is. Many of us drive too fast on the roads in this country, period. Having said so, we also know that there are people who drive under the influence. And the government will spare no effort in introducing to the country measures that will stop or that will discourage drivers from driving in a state of mind that is not fit for driving. I'm going to discuss these measures with the police, and very soon an announcement will be made on the way forward. We can't allow that carnage on the streets of St. Lucia or the road. We can't allow it. We know most of our drivers are responsible, but the few who are causing the mayhem, that has to stop. So I want to implore everyone, including the press, to ask the drivers in this country, to drive less recklessly and to observe and to follow the speed limits. The speed limits are not there because as ornaments. Follow the speed limits, and hopefully we can cause, with moral suasion, we can cause drivers to obey the law, but I have to be in discussions with the police to see if we can take more stringent steps to avoid that carnage on the streets of this country. But the time for excuses is over. Secondly, as you may know, you have heard that a hurricane is probably a Category 4, going to Category 5 hurricane. Hurricane Melissa is in our region and probably heading to Jamaica. I've spoken to the Prime Minister of Jamaica. I've expressed our concern and our support for the people of Jamaica. And the Minister of Education has said, and I guess when he comes to speak to you, you can give him more details, that the government is taking care of the well-being of our students who are studying in Jamaica. As an initial measure, we have secured hotel accommodation for them, but the minister will give you more details. But we are in touch with them to ensure that their health and safety is taken after, their health and safety is being looked after, as our students in Jamaica. But we hope and pray that the hurricane does not create the damage that it can create in Jamaica. And we will keep in touch to see how we can help our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, a sister CARICOM country. Thirdly, the government of St. Lucia has decided that we are going to remove the need for a financial guarantee for students who get scholarships to go to study at institutions of higher learning. You know, we introduced first generation scholarship, which was intended or is intended for students who come from homes, from families where no one has gone to a university. We call it first generation scholarships. But with that, there came the need for financial guarantee. Now, if a family cannot afford to send not one of their members to university, it follows that they don't have the financial means. So how can you ask them for a financial guarantee? So you are not targeting the people you need to target if you ask them for financial guarantee. So the company decided that we would remove the need for financial guarantee and ask the students who get the scholarships to give a character reference, in that somebody will testify that they are of good character, etc., and they will be bonded to work. But the need for financial guarantee is stopped from today. There'll be no need for financial guarantee for students when they get a scholarship. That's going to help many, many students from lower income families who would not be able to get this guarantee. So the government has decided that from today, when you get a scholarship, there is no need for financial guarantor. Fourthly, the government has decided also, as you know, the U.S. has changed its trade policy, and before any goods below $800, there was no need to pay duties. The government has changed the U.S. government has changed its policy, and so the government of St. Lucia has established a government-backed escrow account to serve as a financial guarantee to United States authorities administered through Export St. Lucia. The use of this e-payment platform is to facilitate outbound payments, export duties for exports of CMOS to the United States. This means that we have endorsed a central approach with respect to the interface between St. Lucia's approved exporters and the medium, small, and micro enterprises through Export St. Lucia to satisfy the regulatory requirements in relation to the provision of data and information such as SH codes and other information on a real-time basis for the specially designated application that is called Zonas. The centralization system to support the continuation of CMOS exports for the United States Postal Service on the auspices of Export St. Lucia for a period of 1 year from the date of establishment. So this means small exporters will not have to pay the duty from their pockets. The government will pay it for them. Hopefully that should help exports from St. Lucia, particularly for our CMOS farmers. Gentlemen, if you have any questions on these or other issues, I will take them.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. My first question, well, I have two. So my first one is on the accidents. The police in the past has stated that despite calls for breathalyzers and speed guns, the lack of legislation was kind of hindering bringing it in and it being used. Is this something that will be discussed with the police?
Moving forward, almost immediately, it's going to be discussed with the police.
Okay. And my second question is on the removal of the financial guarantee for students. How come this was not looked at when the one university per household policy or program was being formulated initially?
Well, you could say that it was an oversight, but right now we've identified it and we are correcting it. I agree with you. We could have looked at it before, but these things happen. We have identified it. So now, starting from today, there will not be any need for financial guarantees for students.
Prime Minister, prior to this initiative, didn't government put up facility at SLDB?
No, that would be a loan, but still for that, there was need for financial guarantor. When you got a scholarship, there need for a guarantor, which is everybody had to get once you get a scholarship, you need a guarantor, financial guarantor. And the low-income families could not get a financial guarantor. Government has eliminated everything else remains except the need for a financial guarantor.
Okay, just going back to the spate of accidents, no doubt we would have known about our history with regards to safety or lack on the roads in St. Lucia. So again, the question would be, why did it take so long for St. Lucia to install more stringent measures with regards dealing with this situation?
Well, to venture an answer would be I would basically be guessing. Fact is, we've not done it, and we need to do it immediately. And we're moving forward. As I said, we're going to have discussions with the police, but I agree with you that this recklessness on the roads should have been stopped a long time ago. But it's many reasons why. But on the other hand, I've heard you, Mr. Daisy, but I'm calling on our people to show a level of responsibility. We have to instill some responsibility in our people. We always talk about signal poor. But, basically, how could somebody believe you can drive at 60 miles per hour on a road in this country? You don't need legislation to tell you. You should not do it. You understand? But I agree with you. There is need. If people cannot regulate themselves, the law must be used to regulate them. Again, example. People say the roads are bad. They ask for speed bumps. When they put speed bumps, they complain. They complain about the speed bumps. The same people say people speeding. So, it's very difficult to please people. But we have to be responsible in the meantime. And I'm calling on people to be responsible. Because, when you're driving a vehicle, sometime last week I was on a small plane, a 5-seater, right? And I was not feeling very safe. and the guy said to me, "You safer headed than on the ground." Yeah, he said, "Prime Minister, you safer here than on the ground." And think about it. It makes sense. It makes sense. You understand? Because up there is complete control. Somebody controls when you come in. Somebody controls when you get out. Somebody controls when you land, and those on the ground control the mechanics of the plane, and you can read it. So it may not be as comfortable, especially in these small ones. but it's safer. So we have to instill a sense of responsibility in our people. We can't afford to be blaming. We're blaming ourselves. We need to have some sort of personal responsibility. And I want us to get that personally responsible for your own actions. That's what we teach our children at school, at home. Be responsible for your own actions. You understand? But these drivers, not all, some of them, this is just too reckless. It doesn't make any sense. How can you drive at 60-70 miles per hour on the road? It doesn't make any sense. Then there's something else that we have to look at, giving room to sirens. The drivers don't worry about it. We need to have a level of discipline and a level of we have to regulate ourselves as a people. But if we can't, then the laws have to come into effect.
Okay. One more question. With regards to the education aspect of what you spoke about earlier, I think you mentioned a bond. Is it a work bond with the government? And
yes,
if that's the case, for how long? And
well, it depends on the scholarship. Probably a year, probably a 2. But you know, these things are flexible, because you'll be going to a situation where you have CARICOM citizens, and so it's flexible. But at least to work a year or so if you get a scholarship from the government. But the idea that you cannot go because you didn't get a financial guarantor, that's it.
Okay, I just want to go back to... Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister.
Good morning.
We'd just like to go back to the whole issue of the accidents and the road. We've heard promises being made before, discussions on things like the merit system, the breathalyzer, and what have you. But one of the stumbling blocks I've understood in the past was the legislation. So going forward now, would there be dialogue with the Attorney General chambers in terms of strengthening whatever legislation is there, or bringing in new legislation so that not just the police, because you need to have, it's one thing for the police to stop and charge someone, but if you don't have the correct legislation in place, it becomes to no effect. So would those discussions also involve the Attorney General chambers?
I can assure you that we will look at all aspects, including the legislative framework, because we just can't continue that way. Although I must say there's been compared to last year, there's been a drastic change in terms of road fatalities, but we can't continue that way. We cannot. So we are going to be looking at things. And when the police do the traffic checks, then people complain again about the traffic checks. But people drive, So it's a situation where we have to instill, the whole society must instill in all of us personal responsibility for our own actions, and stop the blame game. Responsibility for our own actions. But I know now it may be difficult to do it, but somebody must say it.
Okay, my second question. Last week you would have addressed the meeting, the RSS, the Regional Security System meetings here in St. Lucia. In the past, the RSS has received a lot of support from the U.S. government, and we also know the issues we had under the Leahy with St. Lucia partaking in those training exercises. Are you in a position to state where we are under the Leahy receiving support from the U.S. government, particularly when it comes to training through the RSS?
Well, St. Lucia is still under some sanction under the Leahy law. Departments where police officers who were involved in the impacts investigation, these departments still are under the sanction of the Leahy law. But other sections, they are eligible for U.S. supports. But the RSS generally as a unit still benefits from U.S. support.
Okay, the final question for me would be, I know you would have spoken to it sometime last week, but what would you say to our citizens at this time to allay any fears, any misgivings, and maybe what we've seen happening in the region with regard to the tensions between the United States, Venezuela, and even now the involvement of Trinidad and Tobago?
it's a very worrisome situation. As you know, CARICOM made a statement which St. Lucia was part of, where we urge all parties to continue to regard our countries our area as a zone of peace. It's very important that we continue. But it's very worrisome. You know about the movement of U.S. military personnel into our region. The way CARICOM is having a watching brief. We cannot determine the actions of the U.S. I saw a statement from the government of Trinidad and Tobago stating that the exercises that are happening are purely for drug interdiction and the areas of disaster preparedness. I can only take their word for it. I cannot see what the statement said is wrong, but I hope that the sacred idea that our region remains a zone of peace is respected and protected by all involved. So, thank you, Jerry. Quiet today?
You had a chance to enjoy Junior Quail?
Yes, I did. I did. Mwete dit tout le monde me assuré yo teni un bon Junior met la teni chay moun babonon, chay moun vivant neuf, la teni moun tout bateau kani bon temps. So me savent chay moun ay Dominique pour Junior Quail. Et c'est un bail qui a venu plus grand tous les années. So, mais bien content, nous avons célébré Junior Quail.
Merci. One last question here.
I hope it's understood.
Yesterday you toured what used to be the site of the Marsha Market.
Well, I wanted to keep that a secret.
Sorry.
We are converting the Marsha Market that was built some years ago, and it has never really served its purpose as a market. Why? There doesn't seem to be any reason why it didn't serve its purpose. It was actually work started by Romanus Lancico. He was the parliamentary rep, and he was very proud of two projects. One of which was a Marsha Market, and the other one was the police station. Incidentally, I did the police station, and I did the Human Resource Development Center. These were projects he was very proud of. He spoke about them all the time, but he only did the market. I did the other two, but I still recognize him for it. In fact, the Human Resource Development Center, I named it after Romanus Lancico. I named it. There was a renaming. It was called the Enchibo Human Resource Development Center. And as parliamentary representative and as prime minister, I renamed it the Romanus Lancico Human Resource Development Center. It showed that we appreciated what it is. We differed politically, but I appreciated his contribution, and I renamed it. Those were the days when politics was about policy, when politics was about ideas, when politics was about give and take, when defeat was accepted and the people were respected. Right now, what we have is slander, misinformation, attack on people's families, etc. But those were the days. So the market never really served as a market, in that it never attracted the people it ought to attract. So it stayed and it deteriorated. The city council used it as a place where people did, there were places where people did traded, not traded, there were shops in there, etc. So in collaboration with the City Council, we moved the equipment and stuff that was in there, and it's part of the community tourism project. Community tourism, as you know, is being pushed by the Ministry of Tourism to ensure that the benefits of tourism accrue to as many people as possible in the communities. And then we Marshall or Castries East is one of the communities that we think should benefit directly. People from Castries East benefit indirectly in that they work in the hotels, they work in the hotels, they work in the taxi drivers, etc. They work indirectly, they benefit indirectly from the industry. But community tourism is for people to benefit directly. And we decided, and I want to thank the Minister of Tourism and the Community Tourism Infrastructure for agreeing that the Marshall Market should be used as a craft center and a center where St. Lucian small business people can get involved in their craft, can involve in the culinary arts, can involve in things like hair braiding. I noticed I know that Miss Morton has a new hairstyle this morning. Probably she can come probably do it in the Marshall at some point. So that's what we do. So I'm very excited about it. And we started work yesterday, and where we expect to get somebody to do leather work, somebody to do, I said, hair braiding, manicures, pedicures, cooking, etc. So that complex is going to be redefined and remodeled, and work has started. And I'm very, very pleased about that. Very pleased about several things have happened in my constituency. Many things happening in my constituency, and which are causing us great joy. What's happening in my constituency? Many, many, many projects, including the long-awaited Bagatelle multipurpose court, where I can assure you everyone will be able to play basketball, lawn tennis, volleyball in safety. The people of Bagatelle and the people of Castries East, they've been longing for that facility, and they are welcome. Our neighbors are welcome, where we'll have an environment where our young people can continue to play in a safe and comfortable environment. I hope to be able to open the first stage of that development very early in December. That is my goal. Thank you.
The MP for Grosele, also the Minister for Youth Development and Sports.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Just a few updates for you. First and foremost, I want to say congratulations to Ancillary and Viewfort North football teams. They have officially been promoted to League One of our semi-professional league. Anybody who would do any sort of surface research would understand why these two teams would have gotten up there, simply because if you look at the work that has been done in the constituency of Ancillary, Canaries, under tremendous pressure from the MP, Honorable Wayne Girard, in terms of their facilities, major upgrades to the Canaries facility, major upgrades to the Ancillary facility, and of course these two teams are now going to be in the semi-professional top tier. The same in the Viewfort. A lot of pressure has been placed on our resources as a ministry to update the Bellevue playing field and now the Passios playing field. And of course, that is from direct pressure from the MP, Honorable Moses Jabatis, for facilities in these communities. Of course, these MPs have been beneficiary, these constituencies, these communities, beneficiaries of our government guarantee of the $80 million for the updates to the facilities that we continue around the island. Jack Bell, in the case of Ancillary Canneries, is a facility that we will see very shortly being given brand new lights. So you would have a situation where very soon we may have canneries in the top tier of football in St. Lucia, Ancillary in the top tier of football in St. Lucia, and Roseau, due to the upgrades we are going to be undertaking in Jackmel, and of course, shortly after we win the next election, the Marigot playing field. So congratulations to those two teams. Viewfort would have Viewfort North and Viewfort South, looking by the way things look right now in terms of the standings, and one MP would have the responsibility for these two communities, and Ancillary Canneries would have both Ancillary and Canneries in the top tier of football. So there's something working in those communities that others could emulate. St. Lucia also participated in the Central American and Caribbean chess tournament in schools. Schools tournament, chess, under our alternative sports unit. 14 teams from Central America and the Caribbean. We're talking about some of the biggest names, including Mexico, Nicaragua, and all the Caribbean participated. St. Lucia finished third out of 14 teams. A tremendous achievement for our young individuals. Just want to single out two of them. 9-year-old Leon Nunez from the Montessori School finished second, Leon Nunez, and a 5-year-old Noah Nunez. So with the alternative sports, we have invested a lot in the school sports program. I've always said that if you want to develop sports in the nation, you have to have participation from the schools and keep them all the way through to a professional level. So Leon Nunez, Noah Nunez finished third, and of course, St. Lucia Montessori finished third out of the 14 schools. So very proud of the achievement. Very soon we'll be launching the alternative sports season. And of course, we know from December 13th until February 25th, we have a series of activities giving alternative sport individuals their level of attention. On the communal level, constituency of Grosley continues to develop. We have a lot of investment in our road networks and the infrastructure, and we continue to see some social development in our constituency as well. The VAC Queen Norbury Link Road is continuing in earnest. We've seen a lot of work, 50% completion by now, and that was told last week, and the way the contractor works, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this week we'll be told that it's at 60%. Recently, we did renegotiate the agreement with the Kuwaiti government for the commencement of work on the Julian Hunt Highway, the Sir Julian Hunt Highway, and so St. Lucia will be able to enjoy better traffic in terms of the Castries, Grosley, and surrounding environs. We are near completion with the Montsepa to Lafayette Road, and when you look at Montsepa, it will include communities like Deramo, Monsitor, sorry. So you would have Deramo, you would have Tido Fair down to Riviera and back to the Lafayette Gap. That road will be completed by the end of next week. And in that very same area, we have started work on the Phillips Road while we complete some works, some snags, as you would call it, on the Vary Lord Avenue. We've also started some work in the Monjuro Ragery area. We are creating a link road just behind the Volney gas station all the way to Mont Plaisir Supplies and this area there. That road has started. We're expecting, and we've announced to the community that we intend to be out of there, and we will be working day and night for the next 3 weeks, weather permitting. We do have some other roads under construction. The link road between Beauce-Joux and Casaba, that road has commenced. That is just behind the Tamin community next to Wasco, headed into Casaba. That road has commenced. We continue works on the other side of Casaba. We're expecting to complete the Deterville Road by next week as well. In Grand Riviere, we've completed the road heading towards, you have to use popular individuals because the roads are not named. Mikey Pilgrim, the Mikey Pilgrim Road is complete, 100% complete. 2 weeks ago, we had that road complete. And so we are starting, we've commenced work in the Piat area that we are going to complete in the next 2 weeks. We have 3 roads that will commence in that Piat community. Monye will also see 3 interventions commence this week, and we're certainly hoping that they will finish in the next 2 weeks. The first road after the primary school on the right, you will see some work and movement from Monday, which is today, work on the drain and, of course, resurfacing for these individuals. Higher up in Monye, which will be Middle Monye, opposite the Jeans, we are commencing the road to give relief to individuals on the right-hand side next to Alban Felicier's property. These individuals have been requesting that road for a very long time, and so we're expecting that work to start between today and tomorrow and to take us to the next 3 weeks to complete it. There's another intervention higher up Monye that we are going to continue as well. Bonte, we have started the process and we are nearing completion of expanding Old Military Road. For individuals who do not know or do not traverse this road, there was some rehabilitation done on that road by the previous administration that really narrowed that road. Since then, we've had a number of accidents in that area, and so we felt that it was necessary to invest some of our finances to just make the road more motorable. As you would see, anybody who would compare previous administration and the roads they did, very narrow. We believe in expansion and development. And so you would see the Kaimoje Road expanded, opened up for everybody. Similarly, Monsito expanded, opened up. Viesikwi, you need another synonym for expanded because we have really opened up that road, and we are giving the Bonte community a similar sort of intervention and just opening it up a little bit to make it a little more motorable so anybody could drive through that community and drive with a little more comfort. Pee-wee Drive in Bonte is also going to be given the attention that the individual residents have been asking about. That is expected to start later on in the week. We do have a number of other interventions, but I do have a cabinet meeting to go to, and I think eventually you can join me on Wednesday for my annual general meeting, where we'll be chronicling some of what we've done in the constituency of Grosley over the last year and some of the plans we have. But I can say to the media that work has never stopped in the constituency of Grosley and will never stop in the constituency of Grosley. And I think the people are very aware that they employed perhaps one of the hardest working individuals they could to ensure that their lives are made a little more comfortable.
Good morning, Minister. So in regards to the sporting aspects, so I know recently the St. Lucia Aquatics Federation had just released the names of teams to actually participate in the OECS's 33rd Swimming Championships in November. I was wondering if you could just give us a little statement on that, as well as the ongoing progress of upgrading St. Lucia's swimming aspects within the sporting sector. Because I know as well works on the Olympic pool is still going on. Okay, let's give it a
Okay, so I have been in receipt of different letters from parents indicating that their children were chosen on a national team and they therefore need assistance with tickets to attend the OECS Championship. I thought it was a little bizarre that it would happen that way, simply because the government of St. Lucia, once we've announced a national team, we take care of the accommodation in terms of flights, unless it's a situation where additional athletes are being invited. So I'm going to get a little more clarity from the PS as to why is it that I'm receiving additional letters for support, but generally when we name a national team, we ensure that everybody has accommodation. So that championship, of course, we know we've done very, very well in the OECS region, and we're certainly hoping that our athletes can continue to do well. In terms of the Aquatic Center, work continues on the National Aquatic Center. Obviously, for me, not fast enough. I was a sprinter, 100 meter, 200 meter, before that 60 and 80 meter at the age of 9 and 10. So for me, everything needs to happen fast and faster. But from some engagements, I've understood that most of the equipment, most of what's going to be used in terms of materials are coming from China. Some have landed and others are landing as we speak. And so we should see the work actually pick up at that National Aquatic Center. We will be hosting the Carifta Swim Championships in 2027, and that is the goal, to ensure that we have a very well-run, state-of-the-art swimming facility for St. Lucia. That is the envy of the rest of the region, and I am more than confident that this will happen.
Good morning, Mr. Minister.
Morning.
My question is with regard to the Boys Training Center, which falls in your constituency, housing young men, youth. St. Jude's in recent times has been a sexy topic. Long before St. Jude's, we've been hearing about a new facility, and we've heard of issues for decades confronting the Boys Training Center. Where are we at right now as we speak with having a new facility? We heard recently about some location being identified. We've been hearing a lot of talk, and not just from you. It's been going on for decades.
No, you wouldn't have heard it from me.
Where are we right now with a brand new facility, a better facility to house these young men once and for all?
Yeah, so, I mean, I never like blurring the lines between being an MP and a minister in charge of a particular ministry, because that's a perfect question for the minister with responsibility for equity, because any development of a new center would fall, the line ministry in charge of that would be, of course, the Ministry of Equity. As the MP for the area, Massad, we've had some tragedy hit that area. I, as the MP, would like to see that area used for other developments. I have some developments in mind. The last I heard from the Minister of Equity was an area in cul-de-sac was identified to house a brand new modern center for young men who find themselves, you know, in delinquent practices, in contravention of the laws of this land and that sort of thing. So the exact where it is at this exact moment, the Minister of Equity would be able to give you all that information. But I do know that the location was identified. I've not seen the final blueprint of what the new Boys Training Center would look like, but I could tell you with the Minister of Equity and this Prime Minister, what we would be doing there would be something state-of-the-art, modern for the young boys in this country. I can also indicate to people who still may not know that we do have centers in this nation for dealing with young women that may fall short of the law and may be delinquent in the constituency of Grosley as well. And we do provide support from time to time for them in the Casabah region. So a lot of the information would be accessed from the SSDF, from the Ministry of Equity, in terms of how soon we will see ground being broken, but that is definitely a question for them.
Let's swing into the politics a little. The opposition have accused you of purchasing crown lands, also having a house at Corinth. Is that true or not?
That is categorically 100% beyond anybody's imagination false. There is absolutely zero truth to me purchasing crown land in Monsepo. In fact, I can go a step further. There is zero truth to me, Kenson Casimir, having ever purchased crown land in St. Lucia. I have never. You know, somebody said never, never, never. I have never purchased crown land. What I can say to the media and to St. Lucia is you could go to Monsepa at any given time and engage anybody, and they would tell you what the facts are. I came in 2021. We had meetings in the community of Monsepa. The people of Monsepa indicated to me that they've been living there over 30 and in some cases for 40 years on this land. The land belonged to JQ. The fact is, Julian Hunt, during his tenure, would have been around and that land existed and people lived on it. It would have increased during the time that Leonard Montoute took over. It would have increased during the time that Mary Michelle was there. It would have increased in terms of the amount of people who lived there during Emma Hippolyte's tenure. The fact of the matter is, I came in as an MP, engaged Charles, JQ Charles, had communication sit-downs with them for government to acquire the land, which was under his private name, for the people of Bonsepa. I, Kenson Casby, as their MP, negotiated with physical planning, had conversations with, I don't want to say his name, but Gordon Charles, about government and the Crown acquiring those lands on behalf of the people. As fate would have it, after years of pressing and pressing and pressing, finally, those lands were acquired by this government and placed in the Crown. The lands and all of this, I'm saying, could be easily verified. A quick check, placed in the Crown. And since we've placed this land in the Crown, the people of Bonsepa, who've been living there for 40 years, can now get a water connection to their homes. I challenge anyone here to go to Bonsepa for the first time. After we graded the road, we started construction of a gutter. We got Wasco to come in and put the pipes to connect to these people in Bonsepa homes. That's a fact. We have, the land in Bonsepa is about 15 acres. 15 acres. We have more than 60-something houses. Next week, this government will be providing 5 of these individuals. We're starting with 5, and that's only because of the statute of this land. Will be given the letter of intent to get their land from the Crown for $1 a square foot. That land. That same land. I've said something before and I'm going to say it here again. The only way UWP believe they could win grossly, especially, is if they lie and lie and lie and spread propaganda. And this is one example. Corinth. I saw the video of somebody passing by a huge house. The fact of the matter is I've never seen this house in my life. Never. I've never been near this house. I've never been inside this house. I do not know anything about this house being built. Somebody passed. And for me, it means that individuals can just pass near any house at any time and post somewhere that this is Kenson Kazimi's development. This has 150-something thousand views on social media. And this is a categorical lie. I do not own this house. I do not have shares in this house. I do not have anything at all to do with this house in Corinth. As a matter of fact, I have seen video of an individual indicating why people take their house and put it on social media. You would have to find out from the individual who shared it. At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is, and I will say it again, this is a distraction. This is a distraction from the work that has been done in my constituency. And a lot of people have said to me, well, why don't sue and that sort of thing. I challenge anybody, the person who put that house thing, to show their face, because they use a pseudo. The individual who put the stuff about the land, they use their own face. And now it's a legal matter. If you believe that this land, this house in Corinth, you don't have to hide behind a pseudo. Come out and say it yourself. Answer your question? To be clear, I don't have house and land in Corinth. And the Bonsepa Crown land belongs to, right now, the people of Bonsepa. And they know that they now can apply for water, electricity. They will be getting their own deeds very soon for them to get mortgages, for them to develop themselves, for their children. That is what I believe is development, not just roads. But lucidly clear. The only way UWP believe they could win grossly is to lie and lie. They have no ideas. They come up with no solutions. They cannot speak about anything to do with the development of Grosley, and they cannot challenge anybody on my side of the aisle on anything to do with the sustained development we've had in Grosley over the last 4 years and the developments we're going to have in Grosley after the next resounding victory at the polls. Thank you so much.
Our third presenter is Honorable Dr. Ernest Tiller, who is also the Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information. He has a few remarks, after which he will be taking questions. Dr. Tiller?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Basically, this morning I just want to address the cooperation agreement between St. Lucia and Nigeria as it relates to the culture and the creative sector. So there's a few points I want to make. You would recall that earlier this year, we hosted the president of Nigeria and his ministerial team, and during that visit, a memorandum of understanding for joint cooperation between the governments was executed, where we agreed to promote cooperation in the culture and creative industry space. We specifically agreed that St. Lucia would participate in an initial set of activities surrounding Lagos Fashion Week and Dirty December, which is a huge musical experience in Lagos. On our part, St. Lucia, we've been actively pursuing the MOU and its provisions, and thanks to the commitment of the government of St. Lucia and its support for the creative arts sector, a delegation left St. Lucia yesterday to participate in the Lagos Fashion Week, as well as AtX Lagos, which is a leading film event. The delegation is led by Ms. Donalyn Vite, who is the permanent secretary in my ministry, Kayo Faswa, the head of production at the events company of St. Lucia, Mr. Trevor King, who is the creative director for the Export the Runway, St. Lucia Carnival Queen Pageant, the Jimmys, and many other creative events in St. Lucia, Mr. Irvin Ace Lochter, who is a musical executive and a musical performer, Ms. Christine Samuel, who is creative director and owner of Christie Creations, and Ms. Tamlan Lionel, who is creative designer and the owner of Luxator, the luxury laboratory. Both Mrs. Samuel and Lionel will actually have their designs on the catwalk in Lagos, and it's the first time St. Lucia will be participating in the Fashion Week, and of course that follows St. Lucia's participation in New York Fashion Week. The main purpose of the visit really is to establish professional and institutional relationships with the Lagos Fashion Week, as well as I said, AtX Lagos. And our view and desire is that it would build long-term relationships and really help support the development of the creative industries, music, film, fashion, and craft. We also looking forward to, the team identifying some basic things as sourcing textiles, sourcing skins for drum making, getting in touch with, the film producers. As you know, Nollywood is huge and certainly very popular in St. Lucia too. And there will further discussions as to how St. Lucia can be part of that setup. One, for the support for the development of our film industry in St. Lucia, but also to how we can also be a location, a set for filming, for movies and other commercials and the like. We're also really excited about some of the connections we'll make for the fashion industry. We believe there's tremendous potential for us in that regard. And the team's role is to really reach out and to build the relationships and the networking. And we're also very excited by the music scene, which is why ACE is there, again, to build a relationship so that St. Lucia can feed into the Afrobeat music scene and how we can reciprocate by hosting people from Nigeria, but also to cause creatives to start interacting more. So this team, you'll notice, is a blend of technical as well as the policy head, who is the PS, and it's really about building the relationships and developing a new space for our creatives to expand. So you can almost start imagine then resegment, meeting Afrobeats in Lagos sometime in the new year. You can see St. Lucian, more creative designers in the fashion scene in Nigeria, which is the biggest in Africa and one of the biggest in the world, as well as we hosting them and expanding the scope of what we do in St. Lucia. The coverage at Lagos Fashion Weeks gets in terms of television and just general media coverage. Can you imagine we hosted an activity with the same players right here in St. Lucia and the kind of coverage it will give us. So we definitely saw when the Nigerian president came was an ideal opportunity for us in the Ministry of Culture and Creatives to push forward that agenda that we've been working on. And like I said, we signed the MOU, and we've been very, very proactive in making sure that we get those activities going. And I think it's going to be a tremendous achievement for St. Lucia, and I'm looking forward to the results when they do return. Thank you very much. Questions on this or any other subject that you may wish to speak on?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Minister. For fear that we do not run into the same social media back and forth that we had with the Japan experience, the Japan Expo, in terms of financing this trip to Nigeria, how is it being financed, under which portfolio does it fall, and what have you?
Well, I mean, we're providing for the individuals to travel, and accommodation is being, and transportation and internal costs dealt with locally in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. With the start of the...
But can I just ask a question? Why, and I'm trying to understand something like that. I mean...
No, I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying... Okay,
you mean on
example,
social media, people will ask those questions?
No, for the Japan experience,
yeah.
It was only after photos were posted, persons started asking, why such a large contingent? Who's paying for that? Is it taxpayers' money? So I just think, Mr. Minister, with all due respect, that it's always good to just give clarity from the get-go. So
but there's some things, so you just, maybe sometimes we're guided. There can be a very loud minority that you don't let determine. Because if you listen to the loud minority, you will never do anything.
Well, that's not that wasn't the basis
no.
for my question.
And the reason why, because it's you're right. People will ask those questions. First up, who paid for them? They're wasting government money. Why all send people to Nigeria? Why is Nigeria such a backward place? Blah 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 blah. Let me tell you, I'm expecting all of it. But you see the dear St. Lucian strike goal. All of them keep quiet, and they just disappear. So I always dig to try and strike gold for St. Lucia.
Okay, my second question, with the start of the winter season, tourism season, what are you hearing in terms of the prospects of the cruise tourism sector in particular? And also, are you having any discussions in terms of the recent developments, albeit in the lower part of the region, with cruise tourism?
Yeah, I mean, we're expecting this season's cruise passenger arrivals to increase by over 10%. We're expecting a significant increase. We're expecting to top 800,000 this cruise season, which will be a very, very healthy increase for us. And I'm excited about it, and it will be done even against the backdrop of we not even having completed all the improvements that we want to have. And the plan is in the next 2 years also to reach up to 1 million arrivals. I mean, that's the plan. And we're working very hard to achieve it. Of course, there are challenges. We're in the Southern Caribbean, like you said, and there's a limiting factor in terms of the ships and coming down to the southern part of the Caribbean. But we believe we have a very good product. We have an excellent relationship with GPH. And once they complete their works at the Puerto Rico in San Juan, because San Juan used to be a hub and used to be a lot of home porting in San Juan. In fact, that even benefited us with American Eagle and all those flights we used to get 2-3 times a day from San Juan. We're expecting once GPH get going in San Juan, it will make us even more favorably located. And we certainly building on that relationship with GPH. So I'm looking forward to it. What we have to work even harder on is the product. You know, cruise passengers come in. How can we get them to spend more in St. Lucia? How can we create more experiences so that they can spend more in St. Lucia? And we're working on quite a few experiences. We're working on the sculpture park, for example. We're working on a number of beach facilities. If you go to Raidry Beach right now, we are adding toilets, we're adding vending space. If you go to Mont Pimad, the island development, you will see the beach park that is, and hopefully we'll be able to open it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And you will see a lot of product development taking place. Also training of vendors and training of taxi drivers, again, to enhance the product. We want to have a world-class product, and we're spending a lot on that. But again, it's not even so much for the now, but it is for us to be able to say, in a few years, we will have a truly world-class product in St. Lucia.
How concerned are you that the seeming unrest, Venezuela, Trinidad, the U.S., will have a negative impact on the upcoming winter season, the tourism season?
Wars always have, you know, consequences beyond just the theater of engagement. And sometimes persons who are involved in making those decisions, they don't really consider the collateral damage that will be there. So we've always promoted the Caribbean as a zone of peace. We've always promoted the notion that nuclear weapons and warships and those things should be kept out of the Caribbean. And we hope as much as possible we can keep the Caribbean a safe and peaceful area, you know, in this world. We do not want to be a theater of war in the Caribbean. But some things are beyond us, are above us. And we, you know, in this global space that we live in, we are takers, we're not makers. We try to influence, but at the end of the day, we understand some things are bigger than us. So we are monitoring what's happening. We are almost every day looking at the matrices to see what the numbers are saying, to make sure that if something is starting to adversely happen, we can respond to it. So let's just hope for the best. Let's hope that good sense prevails, and that, you know, the purveyors of such actions be very cautious as to how they proceed.
Okay, so speaking tourism, we realizing that the cruise business, especially when it comes to the ships, they're getting bigger. Mm-hmm. Our harbor, the entrance is sort of small.
It's gotten smaller?
How, basically, from on your side, what are we doing basically to accommodate those ships? Because now we have 5,000, 6,000. How?
Well, I mean,
in the future, what are we doing to accommodate those ships?
No, we will be doing some upgrades at Point Seraphin to make sure it can take the largest ships right now. You know, as you know, Royal Caribbean has come out with 2 new ships that are totally out of this world. So we will be making some minor upgrades that will allow us in terms of having them there. But you are right, the ships are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But for now, we don't have a problem with that. There is not a major problem.
Can we accommodate them?
Well, I don't think we can do so now, but shortly we will be able to do so. So there's some minor upgrades that have to take place. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about the Drakefield experiences here?
Well, I mean, I feel I need to be detoxed right now. But of course, it seemed to have been a tremendous success. There are no adverse reports yet. I haven't heard any. And for persons who would have gone to, you know, for Assor and Bellevue, and from the photos, I didn't get a chance to go to Bellevue and whatnot, but, you know, there seem to be positive reports. Ever since last year, I've been encouraging the FRC for us to change the format and to move to a kind of decentralized celebration rather than having two major communities. And I have pointed out to them, and they had a consultation on it, that the people of St. Lucia themselves were already decentralizing it, and communities were just doing things on their own, and it was growing and spreading, and we had to get more involved in that rather than still the focus on 3 communities, and this year was 2 communities. We just need to be able to take the resources we have and give support to more communities to put on authentic Creole experiences rather than just focusing on 2, because you could just see it around you. I mean, Moshi had a big celebration, yesterday. Angers, the entrance of the Rousseau, had a big celebration. Those were not official in the sense of designated communities. So communities themselves are starting to, on their own, to just have their own vibe, their own activity. And it's also becoming a weekend celebration. I spent the whole of Saturday driving around my constituency and neighboring communities where they were just Creole limes, So it's now even expanding beyond just the Sunday. And that's very good, and I think we need to support that. So when you do come to Central for Creole, you have an entire weekend. It becomes a Creole weekend almost. Something big on a Friday, Saturday, and an even bigger Sunday. And that's where the people are taking it. And it's very organic. And we need to see the signs for what they are and to just encourage it. So the whole of Central just becomes a national celebration, rather than trying to still tell persons we have 2 designated communities and that's where you should go. It's just getting too big, really, for you to do so.
Okay, while we're on our Creole, our music, Creole music, especially the solo, it seems to be original to St. Lucia. But those bands have not been documented. Is your ministry doing anything?
Those what?
Those bands, it's not been documented. The music that they play is not being documented.
Well, I mean, it's growing. And
it's growing, but it's not being documented.
There is some. I mean, I know the group from my community, Wule Tete, have done a couple of recordings, Secrets. There are a couple of bands that are starting to do recordings. But, I mean, when you really go to a solo session, and if you really follow the music, sometimes you're a little cautious what you can play on radio. But the point is, you are right.
The rights.
Yeah?
I'm talking about the rights. I mean, it is recorded on Facebook, but anybody could just stick it on.
I think Hiram trying to get a nudge for his band.
Yeah,
That's what he's trying to.
No, I'm not in that.
You not playing anymore?
Sorry.
Oh.
He says he's playing at Community Jazz next year, so just then you know.
Okay.
My question, just a follow-up in terms of, we would have launched the 2026 St. Lucia Carnival in Miami last month. I'm hearing talk of the launch of Jazz possibly next month in London.
A mention.
Any update? A mention.
Yeah.
Just any update on that?
Well, I mean, I know the team that's involved. The team has been working really hard to put together the lineup, and from what I'm told, they've made considerable progress. I mean, I've been briefed on possible acts and whatnot and what's happening. I've shared my thoughts with them on it, and I know they're working really hard. The thinking was that we would have in London an early mention of the highlights performers, in a sense, to give some impetus. Because some people are saying to us, by the time we make the announcement in January, people have already booked, because some people are booking 6 months in advance, whatnot, for Carnival, which is why we do Carnival in October, for July. So, you're already lining up your revelers, and we wanted to line up from very early. And people have been asking us for ticket sales already. When are we going to put tickets on sale? Because some people have already decided they're coming to St. Lucia for jazz. They've not even heard the lineup yet, but we're already getting calls about ticket sales. So we have to be able to tell them what day we're going to put tickets will come on sale. But I think too, if we also announce at least not a complete lineup, but some of the highlight performers, it can really create a buzz and let me tell you, when the night we have announcement of jazz lineup, I already getting WhatsApp messages for people telling me they will want their tickets for. Now, I don't think those people want to pay for their tickets, but the point is, it tells you they're already asking because they want to be counted. And I think from what I've seen, the lineup for next year will be even better than we've had for the last 2 to 3 years. I can tell you it's going to be a real exciting lineup. And I hope all goes well and there is no cancellation of jazz next year. I mean, I had to put that in. So maybe we should announce it and sign all the contracts before the Prime Minister makes any decision or announcement, just for fear that the worst comes to fruition. But I'm looking forward to jazz next year. Really, really looking forward. And like I said, from what I was briefed on, it will be a really, really exciting lineup. So I hope it's in place, and next week at the World Travel Market, they can make a mention. I don't think they're going to launch it, because St. Lucia, I think, should still be the place for the launch for now. But at least a mention, and hopefully that, because you can't just mention because somebody has agreed. You still have to sign the contracts and whatnot. Somebody might have agreed, you agree price, you agree, but you still need to sign the contract. So we have to see what happens. Okay, thank you very much.
You have me? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Sean Edward, spelled SHAWN Minister for Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training, and the Parliamentary Representative for Dennery North. Do you have any questions for me this morning? Or is it that you wanted me to speak on a particular matter?
So there is a matter pending at the Anthropo School with a civil teacher. Do you have any information on that for us?
No, I don't have any information that I can share with you at this moment regarding any teacher at the Anthropo Secondary School.
You have shared a video. Good morning, Mr. Minister. You have shared a video, I think earlier today, with regard to the situation in Jamaica. Just speak to what went into reaching out to the students and making provisions for them and what have you. I heard mention of allocations being made for them to be accommodated at a hotel. Just give us a little more detail as to what went into that process.
Thank you very much for your question. As most of you are aware, Jamaica is under hurricane warning as we speak, and Hurricane Melissa, which is formed in the Caribbean Sea, is fast approaching Jamaica, and it is expected to make landfall, if not later today, sometime tomorrow. And as a result of the impending storm, many Caribbean governments have put measures in place to ensure the security and safety of their nationals in Jamaica, in particular students studying at higher educational institutions in Jamaica. The government of St. Lucia, for our part, we have done likewise. On the weekend, myself and Prime Minister Pierre were in touch with the students, and we had several conversations on the weekend with St. Lucia's Honorary Consul to Jamaica, His Excellency Vitus Evans. And through the efforts of the Prime Minister, we were able to secure hotel accommodation for several of our students, where the government is meeting the full cost of accommodation at the hotel. And in addition to paying for the hotel accommodation, we also made monies available to students to help them buy supplies ahead of the impending storm. The majority of the students are at the University of the West Indies, the Mona campus. Some opted to stay on dorm or on hall, and they thought that they were sufficiently secured there to ride out the storm. Some students opted to go with their Jamaican friends to private homes, and I think there was one particular student who opted to move in with relatives in Jamaica. But what is important is that we've reached out to our students, we've reached out to our nationals, and we were able to provide some level of support ahead of the storm. So this is something that is common practice with our government. Whenever we hear
there are disturbances in countries where we have students, we always reach out to the students and to our representatives in those countries just to ensure that our citizens are okay and that our students in particular are looked after in ways that would ensure a certain comfort level ahead of whatever is unfolding in those countries. And in the case of Jamaica, it is Hurricane Melissa, which is expected to strengthen, and it is expected that the hurricane will unleash on Jamaica and potentially leave in a trail of destruction when it finally makes landfall. We are hoping for the best, not only for our students, but also for our brothers and sisters from Jamaica during this difficult period.
Second question for me regarding a different kind of storm that seems to be brewing. We're also going to be reaching out to our students in Trinidad who may be experiencing any form of anxiety with regard to what is ongoing right now in that territory.
Absolutely. Trinidad has been a talking point. There's been several discussions on social media and even mainstream media where people are basically expressing their concerns with respect to the presence of U.S. Military personnel in the Caribbean and more specifically closer to Trinidad. And so there has been a certain level of anxiety. For our part, we are leaving it to the Ministry of External Affairs to basically guide us in the Ministry of Education in terms of what pronouncements we can make where that is concerned. We have reached out to some of our students, not the entire student body, but just to get a feel as to what they are sensing, what is the disposition in Trinidad during this particular period. But I don't think we are at a stage now where we ought to panic. We have to remain calm. And let me assure you that if it becomes necessary for us to reach out to our students in more direct ways, the government of St. Lucia will do so. Pronouncements coming from the government of Trinidad is that people ought to remain calm. That is the message coming from the Prime Minister herself and some of her ministers, and so we have to take our cue from that. But as I said, if anything changes, it is incumbent on us as an administration to reach out to our students and ensure that we provide whatever comfort levels we can during this particular period. But we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, and we have to be guided by their words and whatever advice is coming out of Trinidad and the government of Trinidad in particular.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
I just want to circle back to the question Hiram asked. I guess that would have been in relation to allegations of sexual assault and the said teacher fleeing the island. Has your ministry investigated these claims to find out whether it's true or not?
Well, I am not privy to any information with respect to that particular case, and it would be highly improper for me to offer any comments on that particular situation. There's a process that we would resort to when such allegations arise. School supervision, which is headed by the Chief Education Officer, will go into the school. They will interview the concerned parties, and then the ministry will take a position. If it is one that warrants the intervention of the police, then the police will be called in to assist the Ministry of Education. But as we speak now, I do not have sufficient details to speak specifically to any situation at the Njibo Secondary School. What I can tell you is that we always implore our teachers to operate with a certain degree of professionalism. There are well-established standards that our teachers ought to follow, and we work with our teachers to ensure that they adhere to those standards. We also have a code of conduct for students themselves. So before we can just jump to conclusions and resort to punitive measures, we want to find out exactly what is happening. And in instances where teachers need to be supported, we will support them. But in like measure, if it is that teachers have breached the rules, the guidelines and punitive measures have to be taken, then teachers will be disciplined accordingly. But as I said, I do not want to jump to any conclusion. I need to get the facts. We need to do a proper investigation before we can take any definitive position on that school or on the matter that is being alleged.
Final question from me. I believe last Monday or Monday before last, the delivery of pads to the secondary schools would have been made, sanitary napkins. I just wanted to ask, has the ministry outlined a specific way that these sanitary napkins will be distributed to the students, or is that left up to the individual schools?
I think the most important thing is that we have fulfilled a promise that we made when the Prime Minister delivered his budget address earlier this year. We had recognized that there's a serious problem in relation to period poverty in our schools, and our girls were impacted in a very negative way. and we thought the solution was to make those napkins available at the school level. The modality that informs the distribution of the sanitary napkins is the preserve of the Chief Education Officer and the principals and school supervision. As Minister, I cannot speak to an exact distribution plan, but what I know is that through the Office of the Chief Education Officer, working very closely with the Principals Association and even the SLTU, St. Lucia Teachers Union, to a certain extent, they have come up with a modality that will work and that will bring the comfort levels we want for our young ladies in our school system, both at the primary level and the secondary level. I want to speak to an incident on the weekend. On Saturday, I was alerted by a social media post that there was an accident on the Vieux-Fort Library Highway where a young student from the Banslaguas Combined School succumbed to injuries sustained in a motor vehicle accident on that particular highway. And I must tell you that the entire education fraternity is saddened by that eventuality. I took it on my own as minister on Saturday. I suspended everything I had to do to go to Vieux-Fort, to the hospital, to see the family and to lend some degree of comfort during that particular period. I also went to elaborate to the home of the deceased, where I interfaced with their parents, and I can tell you they were quite distraught, understandably so. And it is one thing for someone to succumb in an accident, but when a 4-year-old succumbs, it is particularly heart-wrenching, not only for the immediate family, but for all of us in education. And I just wanted to profit the opportunity this morning to extend my personal condolences and the condolences of the senior management personnel in the Ministry of Education to the family in Lahore Library on the passing of their loved one. I was also in conversation on Saturday with the principal of the Banslaguas Combined School, Miss Irene Emmanuel, and she too, understandably so, is taking it very, very hard. And this morning, the Chief Education Officer did reach out to the principal, the staff, and the students, as well as ancillary workers of the Banslaguas School, lending support. And of course, we will also be providing counseling services to the students who themselves have been impacted adversely so by the passing of young Ricky Samuel, who, as I indicated, succumbed to his injuries in the accident. There was another gentleman, Imran, who was a Form 5 student of the School of Heritage and Construction, formerly PI Secondary, who was also involved in the accident. When I spoke with Imran at the hospital, he was in very good spirits, having sustained an injury to the head and his lips. The very afternoon after I left the hospital and visited the family, whilst I was there, I noticed Imran was discharged and we had a conversation right there in the community. So I'm very grateful for the fact that his injuries are not life-threatening and that he's recovering very, very nicely. When such accidents happen, the grief is felt not only by the immediate family, but by the extended school community. And even at the level of the ministry, I can tell you that the staff are very much saddened by what has transpired, and we will do whatever is necessary to provide whatever psychosocial support that we can to the family and to the affected school. Also this morning at the South Louis Community College, I was joined by Minister with Responsibility for Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, the Honorable Moses Jabatiste, where we participated in a ceremony in fulfillment of a promise that we would have made to nursing students enrolled at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. The Prime Minister did agree that we were going to provide tuition support to every student enrolled in the nursing program at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. The Bachelor's of Nursing program spans 4 years. So the students in year 1 will receive compliments the government of St. Lucia tuition support in the form of $2,500. The second year students receive compliments the government of St. Lucia tuition support in the form of $2,500. The third year students in their penultimate year, they receive a tuition grant of $5,000 compliment the government of St. Lucia. And the final year students, the fourth year students, their tuition is being met in full to the tune of $10,000. It is a pronouncement that we would have made a few weeks ago, and this morning myself, as Minister for Education, and I was accompanied by the Minister with Responsibility for Health, participated in a ceremony at the college where the students were also addressed by the chair of the Board of Governors of the South Louis Community College, Mr. Cletus Springer. Principal Dr. Marjorie Jameson Charles also addressed the gathering, as did the Dean with responsibility for health sciences at the college, Mrs. Ernest. So it was very well received, the gesture, and students openly expressed their elation and their gratitude for this gesture from the government of St. Lucia. And this is pretty much in keeping with our government's philosophy. We are placing a very big premium on education because we have realized and we are convinced that by investing heavily into education, human resource development, and training, we are preparing St. Lucia for the challenges that lie ahead and to make us more competitive than we are in a very dynamic and unforgiving global environment. So I want to personally place on the record my gratitude to the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister for Finance, for making those monies available. Also, last week, on Thursday, I participated as Minister for Education in a check presentation ceremony at the Ministry of External Affairs, where myself and the ambassador for Azerbaijan, basically, we exchanged pleasantries, and the government of Azerbaijan was committing $75,000 US for the procurement of laptop computers to complement our one laptop per child initiative in the Ministry of Education. And again, I want to thank the Minister for External Affairs, the Honorable Alva Baptiste. I want to thank our ambassador in Cuba, Dr. Charles Isaac, and I also want to thank the Permanent Secretary and staff in the Ministry of External Affairs for having engaged the Azerbaijan government and getting them to commit resources in the first instance for the one laptop per child initiative. The ambassador did give a commitment that this represents a start, and there will definitely be further collaboration between the two countries on matters that are of mutual benefit to Azerbaijan and St. Lucia. On Thursday as well, I accompanied Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre to Dennery Village, where we had a check presentation ceremony, again in fulfillment of another promise that we made to the education sector, where we are providing direct financial support to early childhood centers that are run by private practitioners. In St. Lucia at the moment, we have 106 early childhood centers that are run privately. These are private personal investments made by St. Lucians who are providing early childhood educational services to the children in the various pocket communities. The government of St. Lucia is responsible for running 24 such centers, and then you can almost immediately see the disparity in terms of the workload distribution between the private sector and the government. And so in recognition of this vital and critical role that the private individuals are providing, Prime Minister Pierre thought it was necessary to provide financial support to the early childhood practitioners, the private ones that is, and that is why we have increased what we gave to them last year, and this year every center received a check, compliments the government, of $3,000. Quite apart from what we are giving to the practitioners themselves, the Prime Minister has also committed to paying tuition and daycare services fees on behalf of parents for every child in the sector. And this is basically preparing us for the launch of a comprehensive universal early education childhood policy that we are finalizing. So as we speak, we currently enjoy universal primary education in St. Lucia. We currently enjoy universal secondary education in St. Lucia, and we are poised to roll out a policy that will ensure that in much the same way we do for primary and secondary education, every child in St. Lucia who is eligible to be in an early childhood center will be accommodated, and the government will meet the cost of that child's care/education. So there's a lot happening in the realm of education, for which I'm extremely grateful. I want to thank my cabinet colleagues. I want to thank the Prime Minister. I want to thank the senior management personnel in the Ministry of Education for their support. I want to thank the St. Lucia Teachers Union I must place on the record my gratitude for the support that we receive and we continue to receive from the National Principals Association, the police, and so many other stakeholders, the private sector, the corporate community, for the support that they've given us in education. Schools have received their monies in relation to facilities fees. We are in the month of October. Next week will be November, and there's always a hive of activity at our secondary schools, because this is the time when parents are being called upon to pay CXC fees. Last year, we would have been in a position as a government to pay for 2 CXC subjects per child in the public secondary schools at the Form 5 level. We would have paid for mathematics and English language. This year, we are increasing that by 100%, where we're paying for 4 subjects. Mathematics, we're paying for English. We are also paying 1 foreign language, and we're also paying for 1 science subject. And this is in keeping with the philosophy that we have in terms of what we want to see our students graduate as and what subjects we want them to graduate with. The mandate of the Ministry of Education is to prepare our students not just for the world of work, but to make them global citizens, so that by the time you graduate from a school, or you were to transfer or transition from a typical school in St. Lucia to a school elsewhere, that you're meeting the international standards established, and that as a St. Lucian child, you will not be disadvantaged in any way whatsoever. So we are doing well in the realm of education, and again, I must thank all the stakeholders, in particular the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, for the support we've been given for education. It has been tentatively scheduled for Friday. The government of St. Lucia, in recognition of the sterling contribution that is being made by the Seventh-day Adventist Mission to educational development in St. Lucia, the government will be making a contribution to the educational output of the Seventh-day Adventist Mission by way of a grant of $100,000 that the mission will use to improve the educational experiences at the academy, which is the secondary school, and the 3 other primary schools that they operate. I have been in conversation with President of the mission, Pastor Roger Stephen, and I must tell you that the Adventist community is extremely grateful, and the pastor has conveyed the elation of his entire flock to me when we spoke about the government's gesture. The government does not reserve the right to tell them precisely what to spend it on, but the church has given me a commitment that the money will be put towards the enhancement of educational facilities, instructional support, and things that can make for a better educational experience at the 3 SDA primary schools and the academy, as I indicated, which is the only secondary school being operated by the church in St. Lucia. We are also making a grant available to the Tapillon Private School, which has had some challenges in recent times, and whereas the upkeep of the Tapillon School is not the preserve of the government of St. Lucia, we understand that that institution too has made a telling contribution to educational development in this country, and we believe we have a moral responsibility to reach out and provide some support. They would have made representation to me as Minister for Education. I would have had a conversation with Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, agreed that they are deserving of support. For us to have the kind of transformative effect from education that we need in this country, we've come to the realization that it cannot be government alone pushing the agenda. So our stakeholders, we value their contributions, and whenever it is possible and necessary, the government will not shy away from providing support and lending whatever form of encouragement we can to the various institutions that operate here, once we are convinced that whatever they do and their output can aid the further development of our country.